Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and in today's video, I want to share with you my top 5 favorite quests in Dragon Age Origins. DAO is my all-time favorite game, a big part of that being the origin stories. But since I already talked about my favorite origin story in a different video, I'm excluding the origin quests from this list. I'm also excluding DLCs because they're not technically part of the main game. Shale would be an exception since she was supposed to be a companion in the base game, but ended up being a DLC of sorts that players could get a code for if they bought the physical copy, to discourage buying a used copy. In any case, I don't particularly think the DLC quests are all that interesting, so even if I included them, they wouldn't have made my top 5. I'll order these from number 5 to 1, with 1 being my absolute favorite quest. Number 5. Honorbound. We're starting the list with a tiny side quest in which the Warden encounters Sir Landry in the streets of Denrim. If you walk by him, he will accost you and accuse the Wardens of treason for killing King Cailan due to believing Loghain's lies. He demands satisfaction, by which he means he's challenging you to a duel. Even though this quest is tiny and doesn't really have any consequences whatsoever, I really enjoy it because you have multiple ways of solving it. It doesn't really matter that no one else in the world cares how you solve this quest because the quest itself feels satisfying to complete in whichever way you feel your character would do it. With a high enough coercion skill, you can lie to Sir Landry and say you aren't a Grey Warden, which will make him apologize and walk away. You can persuade him that if he's wrong, he'll kill an innocent, and while he says he feels you're guilty, he has no proof, so he walks away promising to return if he finds evidence. You have yet another way to convince him by persuading or intimidating him to drop his accusations because Loghain is lying, or because the Wardens would never help the Darkspawn. Further yet, if you want to avoid the duel behind the alley without talking him down, you can decline the duel. He will walk away, insisting that it isn't over, and later, while traveling in Denrim between areas, you will have a random encounter where Sir Landry and his seconds ambush you, forcing you to kill him. If you fail to persuade him, or if you accept his challenge, he demands you meet him in the back alley behind the tavern. Once you're there, you can either begin the duel properly, one-on-one with him, or you can tell your party to attack him, starting a fight between your party and Landry and his seconds. I don't know who wrote this quest, but this is the kind of quest I want to see more of in RPGs. Yes, absolutely, big quests with big consequences are important and feel impactful, but these smaller quests that let you discover other people's perspective in the game world as well as get the opportunity to roleplay your character's response are just as important to making the story, characters, and world feel alive. This quest takes the player a few minutes to complete in total. It really isn't long, but I don't know, there's something about it that made it stick with me. Maybe because in my first ever playthrough of DAO, I went to Denrim early because I thought I'd find some good gear, and I didn't have a very high coercion skill. Sir Landry accosted me, and I could tell that he wasn't a bad guy, he was just doing what he thought was right. So I tried to convince him that the Grey Wardens wouldn't betray the king, especially not when fighting the Darkspawn, but I failed. I dueled him one-on-one and felt bad when I killed him because I hadn't wanted to fight him, but he just wouldn't take no for an answer. His sense of justice and pride as a knight were too strong. His seconds just stood there and watched him get killed, and then left to probably tell his family he'd been killed in a duel. That's just so sad. That's what I mean about these small quests. If done well, they add so much depth to the game. I had played other RPGs before DAO, but I had never really considered that my character killing an enemy was a bad thing before this quest right here. There was moral ambiguity. My character wasn't some hero for killing this knight in a duel, and neither was the knight good or evil for challenging my character to a duel in the first place. It was messy and emotional, and it felt real. Not to get too depressing here, have a fun fact. The actor who voices Sir Landry is also Zevran's VA, John Curry, and I think he does a great job delivering Sir Landry's lines.
You're a Grey Warden, Duncan's apprentice. You killed my friend, and good King Cailan. I demand satisfaction, sir.
Number 4. Crime Wave. This is another quest in Denrim, but this time a quest line with multiple little tasks. It doesn't flex so many different options, but I like it because it gives the stealthy, lockpicking, and pickpocketing kind of character a moment to shine. I would have liked more such quests that are solvable with stealth, stealing, or picking locks, because the game is otherwise mostly focused on combat as a solution, and to a lesser extent dialogue, with the thieving skills being relegated to loot acquisition and stealth being used in combat situations to get a crit. You can completely miss out on Crime Wave because it's only available if your Warden specifically has a point in either stealing, stealth, or lockpicking when they first enter Denrim. If your character is a rogue, it's very likely that you do have at least a point in stealth or lockpicking, if not stealing because that one is more niche. However, if you're not a rogue, you only have access to stealing out of all three, and stealing is improved by your character's cunning score, so it's way less likely a warrior or a mage will spend skill points to unlock and improve stealing. A rogue will just be much better at it, so you'd probably just unlock it on Leliana or Zevran. I think it's a bit strange to lock this quest's availability to only the first time you enter Denerim, since even if you acquire Stealing or the other two later in the game, the quest giver would still have a reason to show up. Anyway, if your warden does have at least one of these skills, a character named Slim Coldry will appear next to a house near the market. If you speak to him, he'll remark that one of his associates saw the warden's potential for being sneaky and asks for help in robbing nobles. You have to give him some money at first for him to tell you about good places to break into or marks to steal from, and what you get from the targets more than makes up for the money you pay him to give you the info. But you do need someone who is quite skilled at lockpicking if you're going to go for the places to break into category. I think this quest is a lot of fun because it uses a lot of what's already there in the game. The market district mostly, plus an estate later on that uses the same estate interior, but because you're approaching things with a thief perspective, you interact differently within these areas. I won't give spoilers for all the little quests, but my favorites are stealing Sir Nancy's sword and Master Tilver's key, because you can of course take the simple option and just use stealing or stealth in stealing, but there's also an alternative approach to stealing from these targets that's very funny. If you've played DAO but haven't gotten to experience this quest, I highly recommend making a thiefy character and going to Denerim to do Crime Wave. It doesn't have any impact on the main story, just like Honorbound, but it's a great little side quest that gives a thief a chance to feel rewarded for investing into stealing, lockpicking, and stealth. Number 3. Nature of the Beast. This is one of the main quests in which a clan of Dalish elves is being destroyed by a curse infecting them that is turning them into werewolves. The clan's keeper, Zathrian, asks for your assistance in ridding them of the curse. To do this, you must brave the dangerous forest and nearby ruins in search of the wolf Witherfang, and return with its heart to end the curse. For people who haven't played the game, I don't want to spoil this particular main quest because it's best to experience it for yourself, so the only thing I'll say is that the important characters in this quest are written in a very compelling way. I always enjoy playing through this quest from a story perspective, even though sometimes getting through the ruins to the lair of the werewolves is a bit of a chore due to there being many dangerous enemies within. The Dalish elves in DAO are very well written, and they offer a really interesting other perspective, which contrasts well with the lives in villages, towns, and cities of most people on the surface. And on top of that, it's great to explore complicated motivations and strange magical and spiritual happenings. Oh, and as a little bonus note, while you explore the forest during Nature of the Beast, you're going to come across one of my favorite NPCs, the Grand Oak, who is a spirit that got trapped in the trunk of an oak tree. Now it rhymes. Perhaps it contains a spirit of poetry or inspiration. It's never fully explained how this entity came to be, other than having crossed the veil at some point and possessing a tree instead of a human or animal body. But I actually prefer it this way, because having everything explained makes it boring. It would remove the element of mystery and multiple possibilities that makes the idea compelling to begin with. Number 2. A Paragon of Her Kind. Another main quest, this time in Dwarven territory. This is a huge questline that takes you through multiple tasks that you have to do to assist your chosen candidate to be voted King of Orzammar, so that he can offer you military aid against the Blight. I particularly like the first task of each candidate. On Balin's side, showing nobles a document that suggests Harrowmont is offering both noble families the same piece of land, or on Harrowmont's side, fighting in the Proving Arena as his champion, and optionally finding out why his other fighters withdrew from the Proving and possibly convincing them to fight once more. The initial part of the main quest is integral from a political point of view, because you get to talk to various NPCs and get to hear their opinions about Balin and Harrowmont. It's very important to note, however, that a lot of people you talk to are nobles or warriors, people of high status in Orzammar who benefit from the exploitation of the commoners and the vilification of the casteless. So you will absolutely hear a lot of shit talking about Balin from them, because they're afraid of his progressive ideas and ruthless approach. If you're a dwarf noble and made a baby with Marty, she will offer you a reason to side with Balin, as he would raise her and your child into nobility. If you're a casteless dwarf, your sister Rika will similarly advocate for her husband Balin, explaining that he's doing good things for the little people. A merchant named Legnar in the Commons will also express his support for Balin, though of course he doesn't have any power to vote, because Balin wants to expand trade with the surface and thus bring more coin and opportunities for craftspeople and merchants. On the other hand, the nobles talk about Balin being shifty, conniving, having schemed to remove both his siblings as well as rumored to have poisoned his father, the king. It's interesting how the only thing nobles talk about is honor and possibly having killed other nobles, and how Balin is as a person, and not anything at all about any actual policies Balin wants to implement. Anyway, not to veer once again too deeply into why you should make Balin king territory, I love the first part of this quest because it introduces you to Orzammar, how it works, what its various people value most, and what they think like. Unfortunately, the middle part is where the quest falls off for me, as you're tasked with killing Jarvia, who is the head of the Carta, the Dwarven Mafia, and there's not really much else you do as part of this. You do get to visit the slums if you haven't already, and speaking to the castless people there can give you a further insight into what their life is like and how other people treat them. Zerlinda's Woe is a bonus little side quest that I think really shows you the darkness of the politics of Orzammar, as the noblewoman Zerlinda has been told to abandon her baby son that she conceived with a castless man and return without the baby to her noble family. It's a horrible situation, but thankfully there are multiple ways to solve this quest based on however you want to roleplay your warden. I also enjoy the last part of the quest, venturing into the deep roads and looking for the Paragon Smith Branka. On the way, you get to learn about the Legion of the Dead fighting the Darkspawn relentlessly in the deep roads, find out the horrifying truth about brood mothers and how more Darkspawn are made, and find the Anvil of the Void protected by the ancient Paragon Caridin, and have to choose between helping him destroy the Anvil or helping Branka defeat him and possibly continue using the Anvil to create golems out of living souls. The main problem with this portion of the quest is that the deep roads are a bit of a slog, and can be quite difficult to get through if you go to Orzammar too early and aren't a high enough level and or don't have great gear. The thing is though that the deep roads are the ruins of a huge underground kingdom, so it does make sense that they're so large and that old forgotten places such as the place where the Anvil is are very far away and extremely hard to get to. Otherwise, they would have been found long ago. My main advice for the deep roads is to just go through it without exploring absolutely every nook and cranny, especially if you've already done it before or you don't care about being a perfectionist and completing all the side quests. Mostly, what you'll find in side tunnels and caverns are more enemies to fight and junk that will fill up your inventory. It's also a nice touch that at any point during the Dwarven quest you can betray the guy you've been helping, though I'm not entirely sure why you would choose to do that organically unless you have such a playthrough planned out. The game should offer some kind of reward or reason for the player to want to betray Harrowmont or Balin after having already committed to supporting one of them. Because as it stands, as much as it's nice to have the option to do so, there isn't really something that's likely going to make you change your mind. Or, I don't know, maybe I just don't see it. Has your warden ever changed their mind on who they wanted to support to become King of Orzammar? If so, why? Finally, number 1, and my absolute favorite quest by far in Origins, Captured. This is an optional quest that happens during the Landsmeet portion of the game, which you can entirely miss if you defeat Sir Cothrian during Rescue the Queen. I think it possibly has the most choices you can make out of all quests in DAO. First of all, you can get captured by either surrendering to Sir Cothrian, or if your whole party gets wiped out by her and her fellow soldiers, which is really cool. I wish there had been more situations in the game where your party getting wiped isn't the end, because it's not really well signaled, and most players will likely reload the fight before the last party member dies, or before the captured quest is triggered after the whole party is defeated. And if they really can't beat Cothrian, they'll likely just reload and choose to surrender to her, which takes away from the delightful surprise of surviving and being taken prisoner. I'm a sucker for quests that take away your gear, but Capture doesn't even do it that much. You can find your gear very early on if you break yourself out, as it's in a chest nearby. The reason I love this quest is instead because there are so many ways to get out of Fort Drakon. You can either choose 1 or 2 companions to come break you out, with many hilarious situations arising out of that, or choose to break out on your own. Your warden can be alone in prison, or together with Alistair if he was in the party with you when you surrendered or lost to Sir Cothrian. I love that the game acknowledges your choices and makes the quest feel different based on them. If you choose to break out on your own, you can do so either by force, killing all the soldiers in your way, or by disguising yourself as a new guard and walking right out of the fort without anyone having any idea you escaped. If you instead choose to wait for 1 or 2 of your companions, they will have to make their way into the heart of the fort to get you out. Different companions can employ different and more or less successful strategies for bluffing their way into the fort without bloodshed.
Alright. The big guy here sings and dances while I juggle swords.
On fire.
Right, on fire.
The rescuers must pass 3 checkpoints, confronting the 2 door guards.
Must I point out the obvious? I'm a large, impatient man with a war dog. Either let us in, or get someone who will.
Speaking to the captain to allow entry into the fort itself.
Is that a purebred Mabari?
And getting past Guard Tana to the jail cells beyond. If the companions don't want to risk bluffing past Guard Tana, they can create a distraction by using one of the ballistas that are for some unfathomable reason installed inside the fort. One of the guards even wonders about this. There is also a way to bluff past her without violence by speaking to the 2 off-duty guards standing closest to her and implying that you know they're there because they like to watch Tana. They both have a crush on her and will start fighting with each other, creating an opportunity to slip past her.
And of course your superiors are bound to notice your dedication. Well, I can't say the scenery here isn't a good argument for spending time here.
What? You never said you had your eye on Tanner.
Of course You poacher! You're eyeing her too!
I've been posted here longer than you have. You're the blighted poacher, you mangy little runt.
So predictable.
If at any point the rescuers' infiltration attempts are discovered, they have to fight the rest of the way. And once past Guard Tana, there is no more pretense, and fighting is the only way to break the Warden out of jail. I personally would have liked for there to be some way to smuggle the Warden out or disguise them even when rescuing them with the companions, because I love non-violent solutions in quests. That's why my favorite way to escape the fort is by having my Warden disguise themselves as a guard and walking out together with some other new guard recruits. It just feels so satisfying to escape right under their noses, and also to get to spare the lives of guards who aren't really evil or anything like that. They're just doing their jobs, capturing someone who is wanted as a criminal and keeping them there to await judgment. I imagine that if you either don't get captured or else you escaped without killing the guards in the fort, that gives Denerim more of a fighting chance against the Darkspawn before your Warden and the armies arrive to fight the Darkspawn in the Battle of Denerim. Maybe they're able to evacuate more people from the city, or they're able to kill more of the Darkspawn. This is just the way I imagine the consequences of this quest, of course, but it's nice to have my imagination spurred on by the existence of this optional mission that doesn't otherwise actually affect the game. I guess I really love this quest because I can tell that whoever worked on it was passionate about it and wanted to create something fun and replayable, even if just to see what shenanigans other companions get up to if you choose them to break you out. It makes me think of the kind of shenanigans that happen when playing a tabletop RPG with your friends, which makes it even more fun.
Spare them your wrath, and do not torment them with boils, festering rashes, and lesions.
The fort is also fun to explore, and it's a neat little detail that if you do the captured quest, then when the Battle of Denerim happens and you get to Fort Drakon, you already know the layout of the ground floor. I always love revisiting an area in the game in a different context. It makes the world feel more alive, and it's more engaging than just going to new places all the time. Anyway, these have been my top 5 favorite quests in Dragon Age Origins, outside of the origin stories of course. What are your favorite quests in Origins? If you're looking forward to more videos about Dragon Age as well as other RPGs, do remember to subscribe, and leave a like and comment while you're at it too. They really help. I'd also really appreciate it if you consider joining the channel as a member to unlock perks like early access to videos. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.